Put your hand upon the television set. I'm going to make you some money today.
Would a massive conversion of low-income people to Mormonism reduce poverty?
What? Somebody asked that of a Yale professor?
Right. Now, and he said, as a viable policy, well, no, nobody would ever go for it. But as a viable solution, actually, yes.
The next time you see this crap popping up on your feed, just copy and paste the link to this video.
What about our faith is leading to this outcome?
And that is the core question. If we're able to design better and better addicting substances, drugs or perhaps computer games or whatever else, it's kind of the case that the Mormons are going to inherit the earth. So I try to encourage the productive people I know at the margin to become more Mormon, right? And the guy says, you mean to have more children? And Tyler says, yeah, well, that too.
All of the scriptural references used in this episode will be brought to you by scripturenotes.com. For a free trial to Scripture Notes, please visit the link in the description. Okay, so Jonah, I'm looking at this title. I love bold claims, but Mormonism cures poverty is one of like the boldest of bold claims. But it looks like you've got a Harvard economist here.
Yale.
Or a Yale economist here. That is, I'm looking at some of these things you just threw up in the Discord, that Mormonism and other relatively strict religions can have big anti-poverty effects. I think that Mormonism has better anti-poverty agenda than does the progressive left. What the?
Whoa.
Bro, these are fighting
You
words.
said this is a Yale professor saying this?
Non-member professor. So you guys know Wim Hof?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Wim Hof? The guy
I
who
love
swims in
Wim
ice?
Hof.
Yeah, the
Okay.
Iceman.
breathe in and Iceman.
Yeah, Iceman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He ain't nothing compared to Tyler Cowan. Tyler Cowan has ice in his veins. He looks straight into the camera and he says, you should all be Mormon because it cures poverty and they have more babies and we need that. And people lose it at him.
So this
and
is
he's like,
this
I don't
guy.
care what you say. He's an economist.
This is this guy right
It's
here.
this guy right
Or
here.
I actually have a point on the screen that way.
Is there more to
Brilliant.
what he said? Did he explain why? What's his argument?
Yeah, so the story the story begins that somebody asked, I think it was an LDS guy, asks him the question. He has a blog, and they asked him, he took questions from readers. And they said,
and when did he say this?
Good question, actually. I can find it. Religious, in 2011, somebody submitted a question to him and they asked him, would a massive conversion of low-income people to Mormonism reduce poverty?
What? Somebody asked that of a Yale professor?
Right. Now, he doesn't have to answer that question. He gets 1,000 of these.
Yeah.
But he chose this one. And he said, as a viable policy, well, no, nobody would ever go for it. But as a viable solution, actually, yes.
What?
Dude,
Right? And
what?
and then he explains
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
And people are steaming about this. They're so mad.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, look, and essentially he says, what Mormonism does is it is what did he call it? A sociological cure. Instead of addressing money by giving cash or incentives for this or for that or reducing taxes or blah, 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 or any of that stuff, it addresses the heart of the problem of poverty, which is culture, which is a lot of it has to do with culture, and that is
habits, decisions,
Yes.
Community,
and that's what makes people
intergenerational,
and that's what makes
trauma,
people so mad. Because, and he says it, he says, when I say this, people are going to get angry because they believe that poverty is imposed from the outside. It's an external imposition on people. If you're poor, it's because somebody made you poor.
Yeah.
And he says, sorry, that's just not true, guys. There's a lot of unfairness and things that can make you poor.
Operating as if that is true often keeps you poor.
Often keeps you poor.
Yeah.
So here's the quote right here. Carden has it.
Okay.
He says, a viable policy? Mass conversions to Mormonism? Well, no. But a viable solution? Actually, yes. Many of the poor do not have what could be called Mormon lifestyles. Keep in mind, this guy's not Mormon.
And this is pre the change of the name, so he's not saying Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right. He says, but he knows, he'll sometimes call us LDS. He's fascinated with all things Latter-day Saint. He's fascinated with the church. Because
this part of the quote, proposing Mormonism as a fix makes the poor look less like victims and more like a group partially complicit in their own fate.
Right.
That is fascinating because that is the thing that I think is frustrating about this conversation. I'll see people who get frustrated by the assertion that, you can have an impact on your own poverty level, right?
Right.
Because there are external factors at play, right?
Yes, of course. Of course.
Those are there. But I think when we let those be our masters, it is not in our benefit. And so I like the way that he words this, a group partially complicit in their own fate.
Partially, not, they don't have complete control. It's not like, oh, you're poor, that's your fault. No.
Yeah, just stop being poor. Skill issue. Like,
Yes.
come on.
No, he's not doing that. But he is saying the reason that people don't like this solution is because what you're addressing is the culture and the soul of the person, and that might lead. So he goes through a number of these things. You know, when people convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they view their lives completely differently. They think, I'm master of my own fate. Education, like, isn't just to serve me now, it's to serve me in eternity. So I'll get as educated as I can. Having children is good, and supporting my family, being loyal to my wife, serving my community, trusting people, and like all of a sudden their
Following,
ambition,
obeying, and sustaining laws turns out to be generally good.
And for whatever reason, he says, as a cold-blooded Wim Hof economist, he says, it seems to work, and people rise up out of poverty, like it or hate it. Whatever the Mormons are doing is working.
Dude, and this is a quadruple W alliteration. This is a double W and W debunking. All right? This is a double debunking.
Whoa.
Because not only do we debunk so many tropes with this one. One, the church has hoarded money, and it's a big greedy institution, right? You know what I'm saying? And second off, it's debunking this whole high demand religion being abusive nonsense that everybody's constantly throwing out there. Because I'm sorry, I had to skip it ahead and look at some of these other quotes you put in the Discord.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But he literally said, Mormonism and other relatively strict religions can have big anti-poverty effects. Like, so relatively strict. What's funny is even he knows, like, okay, well, it's not that much. You know what I'm saying? Like just staying faithful to your wife, not being an absolute idiot with your kids.
Right.
And, you know, contributing some tithing into a system. It's only 10%.
Don't waste your money on alcohol.
Don't get sauced on the weekend. Like, we're really just kind of talking about basic healthy living.
Yes.
But I guess that's strict religiosity at this point, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I do like how he phrases it as other relatively strict religions.
Sure.
That's fascinating. I wonder what other relatively strict religions he's referring to there, and what similarities they have. And is this all just centered in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
No, Cthulhuism was a big one too. Cthulhuists were really big.
Actually, did you know it's an LDS guy who, like tabletop RPGs, like Dungeons and Dragons being the biggest one. The second biggest one, Call of Cthulhu, made by a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Did not know
random
that.
Cthulhu related.
dude, we got to get him on the show.
And
We
gotta play.
absolutely should.
We got to play on the show.
He is kind of hilarious. I just followed him on Twitter the other day, and he has some really interesting takes because he's like a game designer. He's the person who made like Doom. And he's like one of the core people involved.
Wait, Doom was made by a Mormon?
Yeah.
The video game?
Dude,
to
the
shoot 'em up?
harrowing of hell made by him. This is great.
Yes. Oh, actually, you know what? We should just do an episode on that. But back to
Okay,
the
wait,
episode
before
ahead.
you move on, I have to tell you, did you know Dune used a different basic coding software? It
Did
was
you say
like
Dune or Doom?
Doom, the video game.
Okay.
Okay. Doom's coding software was so simple. I think it was like the basic C++ or Q-Ball that came out of like the 70s or the 80s or whatever, that you can download it on almost any computer chip device. There's medical technicians that have downloaded it onto MRI screens so that it pops up on those little digital MRIs so they can play Doom while they're just like doing. Yeah, you can play it on like practically Tamagotchis, you know. It's the simplest coding software out there. So anyway, we'll keep going. That guy's coming on.
Wow.
This Alpha Chad needs to come on as well. Keep going.
Right.
Joe.
Okay. So then he goes on a. So of course this infuriates everybody reading this
Because I think the core of my question is, what about our faith is leading to this
And
outcome.
that is the core question. And he doesn't say exactly what it is.
Okay.
He just says, man, I'm looking at the effects and the effects don't lie. I'm looking at the results and the results don't lie. So people come up with, and I've proposed some of what I think it is or whatever. I truly believe it's because you begin to view, wait, I need to get through this life as best I can. I need to build my character until I die. Working for 5 days so that I can get sauced on the weekend and waste all my money. No, that's actually not.
It gives you this eternal perspective.
I think so.
I think another thing about it is it helps you see yourself as like a steward of the earth and a steward of your time, right? Like God has given you this time to learn and progress and become better and improve the lives of those around you. There's this service-oriented nature that we have that I think it helps you see yourself in a better light. And honestly, it leads to better outcomes all around because then you're focused on things that will improve not only your life, but the lives of those around you. And turns out that has positive economic effects.
Yeah, I think so. And whatever the cause, see, economists are like this. Economists are like, hey man, I'm just looking at the data. Like, love it or hate it, I'm looking at the data. But I do think that when my father went over to Africa with this kind of charity building businesses, and there was a barber there in Benin, Africa, and he would cut hair until he would get done each day and take the money that he earned and he'd go drink. And my father and these guys said, why do you close at noon? And he says, well, because I make enough money. And they're like, but if you kept working, you could make twice as much money. And he's like, what would I do with twice as much money? And they're like, well, you could save it. He's like, well, what would I do after I saved it? He's like, well, you could buy another chair. You could buy a big sign. You could get better equipment. You could hire somebody to do it for you. You could do whatever you wanted to. You could build your business. And it wasn't even like a concept for him. He's like, oh, I mean, I guess the idea of increase, of eternal increase of ambition wasn't a thing. It wasn't kind of on his radar. And that's something that I think in the West we have a lot of, and as they say, Mormons are the greatest capitalists in history. The members of the Church of Jesus Christ have kind of mastered capitalism. And so...
Wait, who says that?
Who said that? Mormons are the masters of capitalism.
Never heard that one.
You never heard that one?
Because that sounds awesome, but...
Yeah, right.
I want to believe it.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Go look it up. But, okay, so our proposal is to send cargo planes filled with pallets of copies of the Book of Mormon and drop them over third world countries. Just send them out there into the ether and hope that it improves things. No, but he went on a radio show, and the guy was asking him about this, and he said they're talking about addicting substances and how much of a drain that is on an economy. And this guy asks him, he says, if we're able to design better and better addicting substances, drugs or perhaps computer games or whatever else, it's kind of the case that the Mormons are going to inherit the earth. Because whoever is the most resistant to those temptations and still wants to have children, even despite the fact that they can't shoot up heroin. So he's saying Mormons never get addicted. They have a bunch of kids. They resist all these horrible character-destroying things. And Tyler Cowan says, yeah, that's right. So I try to encourage the productive people I know at the margin to become more Mormon, right? And the guy says, you mean to have more children? And Tyler says, yeah, well, that too. So they're joking about like, you want to make the world a better place. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ make it a better place. They resist all these money drains on the economy. They have more children. And the guy goes, well, wait a minute. Well, you're talking about Mormons are going to inherit the earth. He says, yeah, they are.
Whoa.
Isn't that funny?
Dude,
I love it. I think it's great.
That is cool. I think this is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
When they talk about like the long-term effects of what the lifestyle of the restored gospel will bring to you, sounds pretty dang positive, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, and you think about it, you saw it on your mission, right? You saw these people that they would get the gospel and they'd turn their lives around. And all of a sudden they're thinking about like, they had no kind of direction, and now they're like, I'm going to be somebody.
I like how you phrase that too, like that they would get the gospel.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes there are people in our own faith who just don't get the gospel
Absolutely.
yet. And we have this idea that like, oh, well, if you were raised in it, then you know everything. It's like, no, you don't. You need to do some work to get the gospel. And that happens. You see it in people on your missions, and it turns their lives around. And I think you have the potential to do that in your own life, even if you've been a member of the church or around it your whole life.
Yeah.
You can, if you get the gospel, it will improve your life because you can then focus on those things that matter most.
Yeah. There's a couple things that economists and researchers over the years have found they're just awesome for anti-poverty. They're just good. And one of the biggest ones is education. People get education. It breaks the cycle of poverty. It's one of the only things that can.
Yeah.
And what does the church do all over the world? It has the Pathways program all over the world. Anybody. And it's developed this amazing online education system with the Pathways program, and people all over the world in every different language are doing this and getting themselves educated. So the church is really actually fighting poverty at the root of poverty, like the things that actually make people poor. We've poured trillions of dollars into these third world countries, and it doesn't do a whole lot. And so these economists are looking at it, ice cold, these Wim Hof economists.
Are you religious?
And they're saying, look, the effects don't lie. These guys are doing it right. These Mormons are doing it right.
Okay. I stumbled upon the YouTube video link that you put in the Discord.
Oh.
And let me guess. Our haters are saying that that's not what happens.
No,
That we're the impossible gospel that's going to drive you not only into spiritual poverty, but into physical squalor, right?
Well, yeah. This lady says it isn't just the Church of Jesus Christ, all religion. She says, this is a different day. She says, you need Jesus, not religion. Jesus hated religion. Don't follow any religion. Only
Please
follow
tell me
Jesus.
there's a timestamp that we can juxtapose with what the Yale professor said on this.
I wish I had.
You don't have one?
You know that John DeLynn 100 times has said on his channel how, they take your tithing. They want you to be poor, and they funnel it all into LDS Inc. and this garbage. You know that he said that 100 times.
And he says that as though, like, the church doesn't lose money on all of the support that bishops give people who are in difficult times, right? Like, oh yeah, the guy who is earning and giving his tithing of like what, $10, and the bishop's giving them $50 to cover their groceries, right? Like, this is not an economic thing that the church is trying to just rob people.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've been in, and you know what? I've been in those conversations.
Yeah.
In Bishop regardless from president, and you sit across from somebody, and they need rent or whatever, and the church, the first thing the church says, the last thing the church says, the biggest thing they say is, okay, what is your plan, so that this never happens again?
Mm-hmm. And dude, the church even has a self-reliance program.
A fantastic self-reliance program.
Amazing self-reliance program that teaches people the principles of how to manage their money well and how to like actually have a stable family. It's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. So anything else to show before we wrap this one up? This was great.
If you ever hear that canard, the church makes people poor. Church of Jesus Christ takes your money.
Think of everything I could have afforded if I just got my tithing back. It's like you have a completely asinine take on what tithing is and the law of sacrifice.
These are non-LDS, ice in their veins economists who are saying, well, sorry, no, you hate it, but pound sand because the Mormons are doing it right.
Wait, I just realized also, the whole like woke article of faith, like their dogmatic mantra. Like, you know how our young women recite the young women's theme, sometimes at the beginning of some, young women's meeting or whatever, like, we are beloved daughters of God. We are endowed with a divine origin or whatever. All of the cry bullies, all the woke scolds, all of the anti-Mormons, at least from the atheistic side, they're always citing their "and it came to pass" is studies show.
Studies show.
Studies show.
Studies show.
You know what I'm
thus
saying?
saith the Lord. Studies show.
Their "thus saith the Lord" is, well, studies show.
That's true.
And now we can literally say, Yale economists, like, not only do the studies show, but the studiers say. You know what I'm saying? The prophet hath spoken.
Yeah.
Mormonism and other relatively strict religions can have big anti-poverty effects. Now, I now think that Mormonism has a better anti-poverty agenda than does the progressive left. That's okay. That's the same as like Russell M. Nelson getting up and saying, actually, you know what? I think secular progressivism has a better educational agenda for women than Brigham Young University and the CES system. We're shutting her down. Like, that is just a crippling blow. That is just a crippling blow to all. Like, if the next time you see this crap popping up on your feed, just copy and paste the link to this video. Like, literally, just that's.
Here's the cool thing about this. I think the reason why our church is able to have such an incredible anti-poverty agenda, right, as this guy says, is because of the way it changes how you view the world, how you view yourself, and how you interact with everything around you. I don't know that any political institution can do that, right? All policies end up being something to the effect of like, oh, well, you're gonna, if you make under this amount of money, we're going to give you this amount of money to like try to lift you, and it ultimately ends up always being something that makes you reliant on something outside of yourself anyway. And it's difficult. Like it's a difficult problem to solve.
It's external things. It's all focused on policy by definition. It's all these external things, and it has to be agnostic to the culture or values that you have.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is, well, I hate to break it to you guys, but those culture and values are the driving force. That's the most important thing, and that's what the church, the restored gospel, changes. It changes your values, your view, your perspective. I think, like what you said. Now, however, sorry, he didn't say that. He's looking at just the effects. But I wonder, what do the people in the comments think? Why do you think it is? Why do you think it is that Mormonism, as he calls it, or the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, works as an anti-poverty measure better, so well, that this Yale economist is like, is better than anything the progressive leftists come up with?
And why is it that people who like and subscribe are always better off financially too to this particular channel?
Put your hand upon the television set. I'm going to make you some money today. Like, who's that guy? Who's that evangelical dude?
The dude with the watches?
Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland. Yeah, exactly.
See, like, I wonder what he would say about like the effect of like prosperity gospel stuff versus relatively strict religions, right? Like, what is the difference there?
Yeah,
when their whole
we're
goal,
anti-priestcraft,
where their whole goal sometimes looks like it's finding more money, right? It feels like serving mammon a little bit, but I wonder what it is. I wonder. I'll have to read more about what.
Put your hand on the television set. I showed my kids a clip of Kenneth Copeland. My kids were dumbfounded. They're like, what is this? It's a preacher. They're like, I don't understand what I'm watching right now. They were horrified.
I saw for kind of the first time, I've only seen like GIFs of him, like GIFs, you know, and then like heard quotes.
You can say it right. It's okay, Garden. GIFs is fine.
Yeah, okay. I've only seen brief animations in text message form of him. But I actually watched like the first one of his sermons on YouTube just the other day when I was looking something up. And all I really thought was like, does this work? You know, when I like, who does this work for? Like, holy smoke. So
anyway, it's fascinating because like that seems to be the goal of prosperity gospel stuff is focus. But you see in the Book of Mormon a very different thing, that when you keep the commandments of God, you will prosper in the land. That's the promise. That just shows up as like, it's a side benefit. It cannot be your goal. You need to be serving God, and you need to be serving your fellow man.
Well put.
And then these other things will be taken care of as a side benefit. I think that's a very common theme throughout Scripture.
Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in the Light and Truth letter, there's a great, at the beginning of the church finances section, there's this quote from Was Mormon, this article.
Oh, geez.
The church has plenty of funds today. They do not need to ask for a single dollar from the membership. They could fund the church in perpetuity with the interest alone with this rainy day fund. Then the church also has many more funds available to them for for-profit businesses they run. If there's ever a day when the church doesn't need a constant income from tithing funds, that is today. Guys, you're missing the point.
Yep.
You're missing the point. It isn't about the money. It's about changing their hearts. And then everything follows. And I know you guys don't like to hear it, but it's true. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the only things in the world that can help reverse poverty.
All right, awesome. Speaking of reversing poverty, I'm going to make you some money today. put your head underneath a war in heaven hat. And, you know, I just can't.
Oh my gosh, Garden.
Priestcraft.
Direct line.
That was a promise from. Actually, I can't. He doesn't even speak like that. I'm like mixing the Southern Baptist with like the Kenneth Copeland guy. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. If you want to support the channel, please make sure you guys check out the merch store and you pick up a War in Heaven veteran hat. Also available are new shirts that are pretty cool. If you're a person of means, please consider a generous contribution through Zelle or Venmo. And as always, for this and more, please make sure that you guys check us out at wardradio.com.